have not heard that other folks such as Keith or Andrew, whether they're going to be joining us today or not, but look to you on how much time you want to give them to join in.
Yeah, I haven't heard from them either. I will let you all know that I have emailed Steve twice now, and he has not responded. So I don't anticipate that he'll be joining us either. So,
hi, Kristen.
hi, George.
Oh, Christian, if I may, to that end, I did receive, and I think, Bill, you and Christian were copied on it as well. It may have been in your city email. It does sound like Steve will be tendering his resignation as part of the Planning Commission, largely due to his ongoing health challenges and issues. So just a FYI, both him and Kathy will have regular seats on the Planning Commission. And so that means Sam and Ken, you will be taking over regular seat positions until the City Council has an opportunity to reconsider other applicants and then assign seats accordingly.
They'll move up regardless as the alternates. They'll become the new planning commissioners. The new ones that they'll consider will be for them the alternates. Did we change our code?
We don't need to switch through that in a second.
Okay, so I think knowing that, Sam and Ken, we're going to need you at all public hearings. So you're officially on the roster, and I think we can go ahead and get started.
Excellent. Thank you, Chair. We've got a couple items for you today. So the general schedule is to do an update to you on the comprehensive plan, to talk briefly about neighborhood meetings, which I think previewed again previous workshop, and then walk you through some draft performance standards for mini storage or mini warehouse units here in the city. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave Thornton here, who will give you the update on the comprehensive plan status.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'll try not to sound too muffled. So are you seeing my screen with the PowerPoint?
No. No.
Your screen.
Okay.
Go to Zoom. Go back to Zoom.
Icon.
Go where?
Go to the Zoom icon at the bottom. Go back to the Zoom program.
Which is,
The camera. Yeah, click on that and then click on the green share screen.
here we go. Here.
I want to go on the
Oh, here we go.
Just click on that.
How about now?
Now we got it.
Okay, great.
They're seeing all the subtext too, just as a heads up thing.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to run through a few slides. Stop me if you have a question. This is obviously informal, and so just wanted to bring you up to date as kind of where we're at. You know, we're well into our 18-month process, and when you look at the last 6 months, kind of looking in October, as you recall, we had the public workshop where we discussed the two sub areas, 24 Road and the lower downtown area. And then in November, we had our last visioning workshop with the public, where we had a really nice gathering at Two Rivers, or Grand Junction Convention Center, we call it now. And we had a lot of input on the vision and values of the community, which informs the goals and objectives of the plan. Since then, CPAC has met, our advisory committees, they've weighed in on both the sub areas and the draft vision goals and objectives. They did that earlier this year. So basically, HLA, Housel Levine, is kind of retreated and on drafting the vision goals, objectives, and sub-area drafting, as well as now putting together the draft master plan itself that will be, we are told we'll receive it on the 30th of April. So we don't have that in hand yet, but it's coming soon. So that's kind of where we're at there. Wanted to share some things about the vision and goals of the plan. Really, there's kind of 11 what you might call them topic areas, and with goals for each of those. And looking at these 11 areas, one, we're really wanting to limit leapfrog development and encourage infill and redevelopment. The second one, supporting and helping to expand downtown to the riverfront and expand areas around CMU, provide access to and connection between these districts. On strong neighborhoods, achieving livability and affordability, access and connections between neighborhoods and commercial areas, open spaces. On the fourth, we're looking at a resilient and diverse economy, maintaining our strong regional employment presence and provider of goods and services. Under collective identity, creating a sense of pride, small town business-friendly reputation, and high quality of life. Efficient and connected transportation system, access and mobility, and accessibility to neighborhoods, commercial areas, making sure that we're looking at complete streets along with active transportation corridors, providing access and mobility. Great places and recreation opportunities, ensuring that community has access to parks and open spaces. The riverfront is a linear park system and waterfront. Resources stewardship. The community is responsible for natural resources, recognizing it is an opportunity and responsibility. Industry continues to flourish and acts responsibly with environmental stewardship and impacts, preserving limited resources and preserving natural assets. Under the ninth one there, effective and transparent government, excellent core service to all residents with open communication and a responsive approach to all. And really hope that would be residents are engaged in the civic education, really that city and community support for local education from D51 to CMU. And then the last one, safe and healthy community, city and community proactively and successfully responds to public safety and community healthcare needs that support all residents. So that's a real kind of Reader's Digest version of the vision that comes out of those 11 topic areas. There we go. So, looking at that first one, kind of looking at the goals and objectives for that one, the goal. So basically each of those 11 topic areas establishes the vision for the city and it has a goal. The goal was conceived from what we heard through visioning workshops and other public outreach, including surveys and comments received on the comprehensive plan website. The responsible and managed growth, here's what we heard. Well, the goal being managed growth in a fiscally responsible manner, encouraging infill redevelopment and developing consistent regulations to implement the comprehensive plan. And you can see the 6 objectives there on your screen. Really encouraging that infill redevelopment, supporting neighborhood commercial and mixed use, maintaining our community separators between Fruit and Grand Junction and Palisade, preserving the rural areas and natural environment where appropriate, maintaining and building that infrastructure that supports urban development, and encouraging development, redevelopment along prominent corridors that really fell out of through all the public input that we received. And looking more at responsible and managed growth, there were some kind of big picture, and I know we talked a little bit about this at the Planning Commission a couple of months ago, but I kind of threw it into this slideshow here today to kind of remind us of what those are. And I'm going to talk about each of those. I won't read them off this slide here, but kind of going on to the next slide. The first one really is kind of a big picture on managing responsible and managed growth is we're not proposing any change to the urban development boundary. So you can see from this graphic here that the area of Clifton is outside our planning area this time. In 2010, it was part of it, but that was part of our joint planning effort with Mesa County, where we looked at Clifton as well as Whitewater. So those areas remain outside our UDP, or the area that we would, under the Persigo agreement, expect to annex over the coming years. And so whatever planning after 2010 would not change with this plan, and it would be something that Mesa County would do in the future if they thought that those areas needed to be relooked at or changed. So everything that's got a color on the map is the area under the 2020 comp plan boundary. In looking at land use designations, as you all know, we have a blended map, and we have a future land use designations that include quite a few, the 22 plan, there's quite a few categories or designations, from rural down to urban residential mixed use, which is our really higher density districts. The recommendation with the 2020 plan is to really reduce 6 land use designations to 3. So basically eliminating the state, keeping the rural, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, but eliminating the estate, which are the larger 1 to 3 acre lots. And that doesn't mean you couldn't have a 1 acre lot, but it would be under a more urban district, and really trying to remove ourselves from the rural business, because we're more urban than we are rural. And so where we now have residential low, medium, medium high, and then urban, we would classify those 6 areas into 3, residential low, medium, and residential high. And looking at the density ranges of these 3, residential low would be 1 acre to 5.5, so R1 to R5 basically. The median would be 5.5 to 12, which would be under our current zoning would be R8 and R12, and then residential high would be 12 plus. And that would be under our current code would be R16 and R24. The rural residential would be similar to what we have now, which are 5 acre minimum lot sizes. And so those are really the categories that we're proposing under the current proposal. All right, moving along here. In looking at these rural areas, so you noticed on the previous slide, we're recommending keeping the rural designation. We see a benefit to that in the sense that in looking at our plan area, our UDB, there's a couple of areas that we think can be designated rural for the next 20 years, perhaps, based on our projections for growth. So we worked with the state demographer and looking at the projections for growth over the next 20 years. On the right side of this slide, you'll see a chart and the population estimates. And based on what we have determined with the state demographers, in the UDB right now, we have just under 100,000 people. 99,819 is the state demographer's estimate. And in 2020, that's 2020, in 2030, with a 1.1% growth rate, we're projecting that we'll have 110,000 and in 2040, 124,000 plus people within our UDB. That doesn't mean they'll all be within the city limits, because it doesn't just include city limits, it includes everything in the UDB. And as you know, we have checkerboard annexation patterns at this point. Now, unless we can get rid of all the checkerboard look, there would still be areas in that urban area that would not be under the city's city limits. And looking at the needs then, based on that 1.1% growth, there's an annual need of 557 new dwelling units per year. And then looking at analysis of our vacant land that's available for development, redevelopment in our community, we've determined there's about 11,000 acres total in our UDB, and which is more than what we need in order to accommodate, at least for the next 20 years, the 557 average per dwelling unit per year. And so we've identified some areas up in the north, Appleton, as well as Central Orchard Mesa here east of 31 Road, and so kind of north of H125, although it goes up to I Road over here closer to 22. That these areas of rural could remain rural in support of not leapfrogging out sooner than we need to, and that we can try to help concentrate our growth more inward and not so much outward. And so remember, you recall a previous slide talked about not moving the UDB boundary, keeping it where it is. Well, those areas of rural would still be within our UDB, our urban development boundary, but wouldn't be looked at as an area that we would want to develop into over the next 20 years at least. And maybe longer, depending on how growth occurs. Now, if growth all of a sudden speeds up and say goes twice as fast, in our 5-year comp plan updates, we'd want to take a look at that, and we may need to expand more urban densities further north in the case of Appleton and further east in the case of Orchard Mesa. But based on the 1.1% growth, we believe we can handle the growth inside the areas that we're identifying as more urban over the 20-year planning horizon. Let's see, I think that was pretty much what I wanted to say there. I might add that I've actually met with Mesa County Planning Commission in a workshop back in February and presented this whole thing to them. And this concept of the rural areas, and they were pretty much in agreement and were up to the idea of needing to make sure that whatever the city adopts for our UDB, that they need to adopt it as well and honor that. So I was pleased to hear that. Here's some protection of existing residential, kind of some of those big picture items of managed growth, is making sure that we do protect our existing residential areas. And these are just some examples. This isn't all the residential areas of our community, obviously, but clearly there's large areas of the redlands that are really single family, lower density, kind of that residential low, and making sure that we preserve that, not try to influence that in a negative way, as well as Fruitvale and the regional Grand Junction, of course, and also out in Orchard Mesa. Again, just some examples. Also, the goal of trying to maintain and expand neighborhood commercial. Here's some examples where that might happen. When you look at the Redlands area, right now we have the Monument Village and Meadowlark Monument Village and Meadowlark Gardens area, and so really looking at the ability to try to expand maybe some opportunity there as kind of centers of mixed use and neighborhood commercial. In the case of at the Safeway at 29 Road and Patterson Road, that's an existing. It's pretty tight here. It's probably not going to expand, but clearly the plan recognizes that as being a benefit to our community and maintaining that. And then on Orchard Mesa, on this example, you can see where there's the area out here on the highway at 29 Road, perhaps maybe expanding that a little bit, and then also expanding by Okagawa Farms here, where Unwheat comes in to 29, and also at 29 and B.5 Road, where that opportunity for some future commercial. One of the things I heard from various residents on Orchard Mesa was the need to just have more shopping opportunities out there, and that seemed to be a good place to put it. And it corresponds with, especially right here, it's at 29 and B.5 is already something that we have on our current future land use map. And then, as well as expanding some mixed use areas. And so in the 24 Road area, as you all know, there's the community that Planning Commission approved a few months back, the 5 pods there around community hospital. That's already kind of heading that direction. And so this plan would recognize that, or it would. Also some city-owned properties where we've got the mixed use on the Berkey Park property, most recently done, and also kind of looking in the future at a match-it area that there might be some things that could come out of having a mixed use opportunity on the south end of that property. And then of course, lots of things are happening in the South Downtown Las Colonias area, and mixed use is definitely part of that bigger picture. And then CMU, there's a plan development out here on 150 acres that has a mixed use zoning in a plan development context now. And so this plan would further support that continuing down the road to have that happen. All right. So that was all those previous slides were all kind of talking about managing growth on that first one of the 11. Now we're going to kind of just quickly go through the other 10. So number 2 on that list was downtown and university districts. Sure. Do you have any questions so far? Anybody?
Dave,
Yeah.
designating those areas of Orchard Mesa in the north as rural, I think is a great idea. Is that going to help us with the conflict, the inherent conflict we have with the county when somebody comes in and says they want a zone? We're not going to, since we're designating those rural, we're not going to entertain a project out there that's at greater density than rural. Am I correct in that, or are we always going to be entertaining projects?
Well, I think that's where it's really important that we get Mesa County Planning Commission on board and that they adopt our plan, especially for those areas that they're going to have more of the pressure from the landowner to say, you know, I don't want to wait 20 years. I don't want to sell it for 4 units per acre out here. So by designating it rural, basically it falls in line with the current zoning for most properties out there right today in Mesa County. The county's already zoned those areas RSFR in the county, which is 5-acre minimum lot sizes. So what we're suggesting to the county is don't change it. Your current zoning is matching what our plan is showing, and that the only need to change would occur in the future when it's determined that the city needs to grow more north than what we're showing out on this proposed comprehensive plan, which right now is about 8.25 road. So anything between 8.25 and say I.25, which is all within the UDB, that 1 mile stretch, would need to kind of wait until the demand is there. And we think it's not going to be in demand until about 2040 or later.
Yeah, that's what we think, but you know, and that was a very diplomatic answer, but you know, I'm a developer and I come in and I want to put 800 units or 400 units out there, and I find some rural landowner that suddenly is in his 80s and wants to sell. Are we going to tell them, no, you can't do that because it's designated rural, or are we going to end up in a fight over that?
Well, I mean, the first step would be they would need to come to us and say, we think the time is sooner rather than the 20 years that this particular property we're looking at needs to have 800 units on it, or whatever that proposal might be. And they're going to need to do all the studies and basically show us why it's needed and how it's going to be paid for. We're trying to, you know, minimize our leapfrogging and the cost of services and just the sprawl that has continued over the years in a patchwork fashion. So we're really trying to minimize that, and they need to be able to show us that the time is sooner rather than later for that expansion.
And I actually think that's great.
Yeah, Commissioner Wade, if I may add to that a little bit too, is that certainly the process would be akin to what it is today, is that should something that we don't expect come along and we think that it's supportable, or the applicant or project proponent does, they could certainly request a comprehensive plan amendment for those changes. And then it's really left to you and the city council to determine whether the plan change is warranted, and that would set the stage then for looking at expansion to, or a change even to some other designation that we are showing on the plan.
Kind of a question that reflects on our discussion here, is it seems like it would decrease the use of flagpole annexations.
It would definitely decrease it for sure. Can't guarantee we won't still have a couple, but yeah.
Yeah, and just to be clear on that, in those areas that are specifically shown as rural, that likely would be the case. You know, we wouldn't see any far-reaching annexations, but do recall that even kind of internal to our traditional urban development boundary, we have a number of annexations that will continue to likely have some flagpole component to them, based on the Persigo agreements, direction and a longstanding agreement to take in those properties when they are developed. So I don't think they go away. Our hope is that this plan, especially the land use component of it, just creates a predictable environment for existing landowners and potential developers about where kind of that boundary is between urban and rural, at least for the foreseeable future for the period of this plan.
Any other questions or thoughts?
No, I appreciate the discussion.
All right, perfect. So looking at those other 10, so we have the downtown university district. So the goal that's come out of all of this is to expand the city's core, including the greater downtown and university districts, capitalizing on key areas that offer unique experiences and act as attraction destinations. And the objectives include cultivating a livable downtown and university area, support mixed-use infill and redevelopment, expand streetscape improvements, and strengthen multimodal connections. So that's that one. Looking at the third one then, strong neighborhoods and housing choices. The goal, preserve and develop neighborhoods that are active and walkable and offer a range of housing options. So 5 objectives that have been drafted to date. Encourage connected and walkable neighborhoods. Invest and maintain infrastructure. Making sure there's that mix of housing types. Preserving historic neighborhoods and strengthening the community through neighborhood-focused programs. Under a resilient and diverse economy, the goal, promote business growth for a diverse and stable economic base. We have a number of objectives: local and regional collaboration on economic development initiatives, improve broadband and infrastructure, grow, create, and retain local businesses and entrepreneurs, expand and sustain tourism, address child care shortages, assisting working families and single parents, address healthcare costs and access, explore emerging technologies that can have a positive impact on Grand Junction's economy. So obviously these aren't all things that city government addresses, but we're kind of the formulator of the vision for the community. And so working with all the various partners out there, hopefully all these things can come to pass. Under collective identity, the goal, promote a strong sense of pride and place in Grand Junction with an emphasis on community assets and livability. The objectives include the physical appearance of the city, streetscape improvements, supporting arts and culture, preserving Grand Junction historic assets, and establishing a community brand. Under efficient and connected transportation, goal, provide a safe and convenient multimodal transportation system. The objectives to reach that goal include safe and convenient, cohesive and connected transportation, filling in network gaps for pedestrians and bicyclists, expanding public transit, policies for new transportation technology, providing pedestrian and bicycle education opportunities, and implementing a wayfinding system. Under great places and recreational opportunities, the goal, expand the community's park system, recreation opportunities, and access to open spaces. The objectives to reach that goal, safe and accessible network of parks, open space, greenways, and trails. Continue to redevelop and revitalize the city's riverfront. Develop new park space and other community facilities. Preserve unique assets and maintain access to public lands. And develop a cohesive system. Under resource stewardship, goal, accommodate growth while reducing negative impacts to the natural systems on which Grand Junction relies. Objectives include promoting energy and water conservation, recycling, waste reduction and reuse, economic development opportunities with low environmental impacts, sustainable development practices, renewable energy, integrate land use and transportation planning, reduce the risk of fires and other natural hazards at the interface between urban and natural areas, and protecting our air quality.
Dave, on that last slide, Dave, on that last slide, so it says something about delivering drones. Can you talk about that a little bit?
You broke up a little bit. Delivering what?
Delivery drones.
Oh, yeah, it was. It's a new technology that I don't know a whole lot about, but I know they're starting to talk about it, and so to where I know that they've used drones to deliver. It happened in Baltimore, I think it was, and actually it was my wife's relative. He's a big name doctor in the DC Baltimore area, where they actually delivered a transplant organ by drone to a hospital, from hospital to hospital. And so, but there's also talk, about packages of all kinds of sorts that would be drone delivered. So when we think about it from a land use perspective, we need to be thinking about what that looks like, and and what that means in the sense of the space that would be required in order for that to occur, where it's not going to be entangled with other things going on around it, or whatever impact that might come out of or arise out of that kind of technology. And so as we look ahead for the next 20 years, who knows what the technology will look like in 10 or 20 years when it comes to those kinds of emerging technologies. So that was just an example we threw in there because it was something that came up in our public input, and we thought we need to at least recognize and address the fact that this is something we need to think about. Does that help?
Thank you.
All right. Great question. That's something we think about every day for sure. Under effective and transparent government, the goal is to provide open community engagement in a collaborative and transparent manner, and includes all residents. And so some of the objectives include ensuring delivery of city services and infrastructure, aligning decision-making and budgeting with the implementation of the comprehensive plan. That's really important to the city. Providing broad and meaningful citizen engagement, collaborate with local, regional, and state partners, expand revenue opportunities and sources, providing professionalism, accessibility, and a high level of service to the community, fostering inclusivity that embraces and respects diversity, and diversify and expand public communication. So a big list of things that we need to be thinking about and doing. The last two, second to last, we got education. Goals: support a high quality and accessible education system for the community. And objectives that we have listed are support the growth of institutions of higher learning, development of a skilled and adaptable workforce, and support School District 51's educational system. And then the last one, safe and healthy community. The goal is to promote public health and wellness, working with community healthcare organizations towards a safe, healthy, and inclusive community. And the objectives include community safety and emergency response, a safe and resilient community, provide high quality public safety and emergency response, health and wellness, and support neighborhood programs and associations. So those are the 11 kind of topic areas.
Hey, Dave, I have a question. Could you explain support neighborhood programs, associations to strengthen the community fabric?
Sure.
Can you give some examples?
I can jump in.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah, we're gonna let Tamara jump in.
Yeah, good question, Commissioner Scott. Since we've actually had a neighborhood program, and this is just one example here at the city for a number of years, and it's kind of waned and waxed throughout the years, but we do support from a public perspective things like neighborhood block parties and other types of kind of micro grants, if you will, to neighborhoods to really help support their own gatherings or maybe some small improvement projects in their neighborhood. So that's just kind of an example of the types of things that may broadly get encompassed in a neighborhood program. But the idea is that the stronger our neighborhoods are, the stronger our community is. That's really an important piece of living here in Grand Junction.
Well, I think that's great, and I'd like just to make sure the community understands that, that knows that they know the resources from the planning development.
Right.
Any other questions or thoughts?
Yeah, this is Ken. Just a couple of comments. Well, first of all, I think it's awesome and I would support it as written to the letter. But a couple of things I saw that I thought maybe could be strengthened or highlighted a little more. Under resource stewardship, I like the objective promote use of sustainable development practices. But I'm just wondering if that, might be strengthened a little bit instead of just promote use. Something like develop and implement a comprehensive sustainability plan. Because I know there is there's a, I can't remember what it's been called, a committee or task force or work group or something like that, that the city is forming with department leaders under Greg's leadership to look into that and, hopefully come up with some sort of a comprehensive plan on that that would cover economic development or development practices as well as more broadly. So that's one thought. And then the other one under safety and health, which nobody could have anticipated at the time that most of this was coming out. But since the world has changed and one of the goals of recovering from COVID-19 is going to be do better planning next time. For the next time, maybe we could get something in that category about develop an effective epidemic preparedness plan or something to that nature.